Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the modern market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to hopefully make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have BlackRock expanding money market fund onto Solana. We were just talking the other day about how everything's going to happen on ETH. All the institutions trust ETH. Maybe not the case. We will discuss. We've got Movement Labs drawing scrutiny once again following Binance's market maker investigation. We touched on that just briefly yesterday. I think some more information and commentary came alive yesterday, so we want to get into that too. And then finally, on the more commercial side, Snapster was snapped up for $207 million to build a music metaverse. That is pretty cool. And just one of our friends, I'm not sure if he's in the audience today, but he just messaged me beforehand to say it was the art fund, Hive Mind. They're actually initially a private equity fund, and it was them who made that sale. So congrats to them. Maybe they're going to be buying some more art. We also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs as usual, plus a general discussion on what we think is going on in the market, plus a couple of interesting opportunities today. I'm delighted to say I've got Legendary, Bread, and Adam, product lead at Pyro Nation and Proof of Play, with us today. Cannot wait to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, before we do, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very risky. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Wednesday. It is the 26th of March. How are you doing? How are you feeling? You accused me of something very bad when you first joined the call on the show. Just before the show, you said that I looked like I was in a good mood. And I felt that was an accusation today. Why did you do that?
I'll take it back. I'll take it back. I just saw you by yourself. So just to paint this picture, right? Typically, I am the first one to join StreamYard because I prepare screen sharing. I prepare the links. I got everything on screen today. I shared the link for the boys, but you, B-Check, were there before me because I was just finishing up my protein shake. And then I join you and I see you all alone in StreamYard smiling by yourself. So I was like, I could take this two ways. Either something's going on or you're just in a good mood. So I went with the innocent, hey, you're in a good mood. What's happening? So I'll take that back though. And I'll say that I am in a very good mood because I've been spamming the timeline actually with GPT 4.0.
We should show this very quickly. This is pretty awesome. If you're watching in, have you got it ready?
Yeah, I got it ready. GPT 4.0 released this new image creation model where you can basically upload a character, upload multiple characters. And I said, I want to see a full body illustration of my Pudgy exploring Tokyo. I want to see it in Ghibli style. I want to see my Pudgy running around in a landscape. It also works with other characters.
This is the best one.
Where I took Benny, also shout out to Benny if he's listening today, his Play Ember PFP and my Pudgy. I'm like, I want to explore this temple. And it is pretty good at just taking the art that you upload to it and create something with it. It was like, put me hyper realistically in a like open world medieval RPG setting, and here's my Pudgy doing that. So it's pretty fascinating. And now it also nailed text. That means you can actually create, don't have an example of this right now. You can create full-on infographics with it. Brett, you should try that.
I was gonna say, am I switching from Claude? Like, I think it shit might have swung back now. I tried Giblification. I could not do it. I was getting dicked by the content policy for like half an hour. I did everything I could to get around it.
What were you asking
massaging words.
What were you asking?
I started with just generic. Hey, can you do this image, but in general or anime? And then it's like, oh, can you give it a Ghibli style? Oh, like I was doing all the suggestions because there was that huge thread of like 1,000 people that did all the things and everything that they did. It just didn't like me last night for whatever reason.
I'll send you my prompt. It worked on the first time. I was just sending my wife photos of our like family, like in Studio Ghibli style, and she was just having the best time. Like all these like family photos, I was like sending them to her one up to the other. I saw a thread. It's like, delight your wife by sending her photos of your family, and I was like, okay, I'll try this, and it worked. Twitter has some alpha from time to time.
Yeah, that was literally in the previous iterations, that was the prompt I always tried. Like, I love Ghibli. I always used to try to get something in a Ghibli style, and it was never that effective. It was always, I had to massage it with actual words, and it just never understood what Ghibli meant. But yeah, so I'm super excited to actually get it to unlock this time.
That's something that Midjourney historically has been way better at. Like, not even only Ghibli style, take a specific artist, take a specific anime, take a specific game and create it in that style. But that did not support to upload a specific picture to it, so it could like create new things. But it seems like, I don't know, ChatGPT's content policy is kind of fun, because sometimes like, yo, I want to create this movie character, and then it says, yeah, I can't do that because it's against my content policy. I'm like, all right, just do something that's inspired by that character. And it literally does exactly that. Character says, oh yeah, that I was very inspired by this character, but it's exactly the same. So it's kind of fun how it can trick itself to avoid its own content policy.
I had to do that for Abraham Lincoln. I was like, I want Abraham Lincoln on a surfboard. They're like, bro, I can't do a historical figure. So go give me a Abraham Lincoln impersonator. I'm like, okay, done.
You have to go to Gemini for that. But you may get a black Abraham Lincoln. That's the only downside.
I was about to say, then it comes in like a hyper woke Abraham Lincoln, right?
A huge variety in terms of impersonators, I think.
But seriously, the next part, real quick to that, is the impressive one. Like, I was having this conversation with ChatGPT about my supplementation and compound plan, and now I finished it like 3 days ago. Now I have access to this new image generating model. I'm like, create a beautiful infographic of all the supplements I'm supposed to take, which is basically just text with some nice illustrations. It nailed everything.
Interesting. Because as you said, text used to be really bad at. Remember when we were trying to do YouTube thumbnails with it briefly, and like it can't do a word. Like if you said it's like Trump pumps the market by 10 billion, like it will just spell billion wrong. The number will be wrong. The dollar sign will be backwards or something. This is fascinating stuff. So, Ledge, if there's a top tip that you're taking away from this before we get into the main stuff now, what is it for people experimenting with AI?
It's probably trying to stay up to date with like capabilities of new models, because there's new Gemini models coming, there's new coding models, and not trying to explore every single domain of it, because that can be quite overwhelming. And honestly, also quite expensive if you want to have like premium access to everything. Like, I'm on the $200 plan for GPT alone to have all the features the fastest. But pick a lane that you're interested in, find a couple people who are like reporting on that, and play around with the new tools, try to get early access to, because the pace that it seems to speed up and accelerate is becoming pretty insane.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And this latest one is GPT 4.0. So this is the normal OpenAI one, right?
Yeah. I mean, 4.0 has existed as a model, but it now has a new image generating algorithm that's tied to that model.
Perfect. Excellent summary. Like that, like being on top of like the creative stuff as well, because we're all creators on the internet, I guess now. Let's keep it moving though. We are getting into the price action as usual. Starting with the majors, we've got Bitcoin up 1% to 88.2K. You've got ETH flat, as usual, just 2K, nothing more, nothing less. XRP up 1% to 2.5. BNB $632. Solana up 2% to 145. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have Doge. Wow. Okay, is this? I'm gonna press refresh because this seems too good. I'm just double checking. Okay. We can go with it. Up 10%. Doge is to 20 cents. SHIB's up 15. Pepe's up 15. Trump is up just a few. Bonk is up 10. Bartcoin is up 15. SPX up 8. WIF is up 8. Pengu's up 4. Almost double digit, or pushing double digits for a lot of the memes into the green. AI16Z is up 4. Mog's up 13. Peanut is up 7. So a lot of green on the meme coin side of things. AIXBT on the AI, maybe a bit more muted, up 4%. Getting into the main headlines themselves, we've got BlackRock expanding their money market fund into Solana. Legendary is going to explain a little bit of the details there in just a little bit. We've got Movement Labs drawing scrutiny following Binance's market maker investigation. Remember, yesterday they announced a $38 million buyback of their token. But there's a variety of pieces of news coming out yesterday that were kind of suggesting a bit more. How would you describe this? A bit more malpractice potentially in the whole market maker ecosystem. Whether founders are involved or not, we don't know, but we will explore that. Try to explain some of the stuff that's going on there in a bit more detail in a bit. And then on the commercial side, Napster snapped up for $207 million to build a music metaverse. thought the metaverse might have been finished in 2021, but it is not. Maybe it might resurge in a slightly different form. So those are the headlines we're going to be discussing today in a bit. We've got some interesting discussion before that. Before we get there, Ledge, anything we need to know on the NFT side? Still seems pretty hot for me.
Indeed, it is. And the mover of the day clearly is the Bored Ape Yacht Club. It's up 16% over the week. It's up 9% over the last 24 hours, sitting at a 14.25 ETH floor. Very, very strong movement. 300 ETH in volume. That is also impressive to see. And that's generally on the back of a lot of collections seeing a fair amount of green. Obviously, Mutant Apes up to a similar extent, but so are Azuki's. They're up 6%. The Good Vibes Club, which had a massive correction, has rebounded strongly from that, is up 25%. So it seems that we are seeing quite a bit, quite more than actually quite a bit, quite some healthy volume that we haven't seen in a while in NFTs. Also had the Taproot Wizards mint yesterday at 0.2 BTC for most minters, but I don't think that secondary trading is live for that just yet. So we can't report on the volume there.
Good stuff. Yeah, we'll touch on Taproot Wizards again in a moment. We've got, just get everyone up to speed with everything else in the market. We had $11.5 trillion BlackRock launching a BC ETP in Europe. Legendary spoke about that yesterday as well. Star viral app builder Nikita Beer announced he will be joining Solana to help apps build. I think that was pretty big news. If you don't know Nikita Beer, really, really well known as someone who can accelerate apps and grow them incredibly fast. That's considered to be a very big win for the Solana ecosystem to have him on as an advisor to builders. We also had news Plasma Chain for stablecoins on Bitcoin revealed their technical documentation. They shared a couple of interesting, unique selling points, which they're going to be pushing for the stablecoins to go onto their chain. I'll share those in a little bit in a moment. Taproot Wizards, as Legendary just said, had 95% of their guaranteed spots minted out. There are 90 more that will go on public sale today if you are still interested. Kaito rolled out a mobile version for pro subscribers. Rec Drinks shared a new flavor teasing an abstract collaboration. And again, along with the trend where the SEC are, shutting down all of these investigations into crypto companies. Yesterday, they closed their investigation into Immutable, which is good news, I would think. That's the roundup to get everyone up to speed. Before we get into the main stuff, maybe I'm going to come to you, Brad, first for anything that's catching your attention in the roundup before we get into the main headline.
Honestly, it's that Nikita announcement, just like, because that kind of steps outside of our bubble, right? So for people who don't know, Nikita Beer is like a prolific growth application go-to-market VC, or not VC, but like I would say just like a startup personality. I'm not intimately familiar with him, but like that's his persona. And the fact that he acknowledged Solana as a growing ecosystem and one that is coming to market with a lot of product, and one that he's going to lend his knowledge to, it's pretty fucking big. If you look at his tweet, you actually see that like he did it in a 2-part tweet. The first one was just like he's kind of rambles a little bit. And the second one is like, I'm working at Solana. And the second tweet in his thread actually blew up whenever I checked bigger. So that's 560 impressions there. His second one is at 680. So like his second tweet was bigger than his main tweet because it called out Solana specifically. And I'm going to work for it. And that was the headline. That was the hook. That was the banger that everyone kind of figured out because the account's so big. And yeah, so it's actually something that's super impressive. And the opposite of this is kind of just an aside that I kind of took notice over the last few days, is if you looked at Polymarket, they actually did the one tweet bamboozle of everyone on the timeline, because they did the initial tweet that just said Solana, and everyone freaked the fuck out. They get on there, they're tweeting it, they're liking it, they're freaking out, they're speculating, saying Polymarket's going to Solana. And then they did a second tweet like an hour later on top of it that just said like, can now be deposited into Polymarket to fund your Polymarket account. So it wasn't a migration, it wasn't anything. It's just like we're announcing a new deposit address basically for you. But they used the psychology of Twitter to turn that into a viral tweet. So yeah, two big wins for Solana and headlines. But one of them is actually really meaningful, which is Nikita Beer. That's a long-term play out thing.
Yeah, Nikita is about as elite as it gets in terms of growth marketing and viral growth marketing. And he just understands growth loops probably better than anyone else at the moment. It's really exciting for Solana. We'll see who he ends up working with. He also has kind of a track record for building companies and selling them super quickly. So it's kind of like a perfect fit for a chain where like Pump Fund is the most successful, app to launch there. And so we'll see if he works on something that can persist long term, or if we just see a bunch of these like Pump Fund style, like super fast rise and then crash out. So I have a ton of respect for him as a builder. I didn't mean that in any like way to shade, but it is very much like a fit for his vibe and how he builds and grows companies.
That's such an interesting point, because I think kind of like with all leadership, you have people who excel at different types of things. You can have companies in a really bad position and someone might excel in turning it around. Doesn't mean they'll take them to becoming the top company, but you'll get you from like bad to now acceptable. And then you go from acceptable, and maybe the next person is the person to take you from acceptable to outstanding. And I guess what you're saying there is Nikita's exceptional at going from like 0 to 1, or maybe higher than 1 potentially. But then, if you want to build that product out for the long term over multiple years or decades or whatever, like that's not his the skill set he possesses, but he's outstanding at doing that first bit. Just wanted to share one thing. I tweeted this yesterday when I saw the news, because this is the one thing I took away from one of the podcasts I listened to with him, which is on the age of your consumers. And he says he always builds for teenagers, primarily, because for every year that your customer or your audience gets older, they are less likely to share your work. And so the older that your customers are, the more likely it is that you're going to have to pay to grow, because the people who you're targeting are not going to be like hyper online, or they've just got other things to do in life. So they're not even around each other in social settings, like in college or school or wherever, where you're always around each other to make your app go viral. I thought that was really interesting. Adam, do you have any reflections there? Was there any other key takeaways since you've been following his kind of journey as well?
Yeah, I think your point earlier was spot on. There's very few CEO founder types like Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos who can go from incubation through to hypergrowth. And so he knows his niche. He knows where he can fit in. Like, for example, like myself, like I've done a lot of 0 to 1 work. And so it's very different from growth work. I've also done growth work, but for me, like my happy place is when I'm taking something from like something doesn't exist, your pre-product market fit, you're in this like what's called idea maze, and then you want to like figure out how to delight your customers and find like a market. I've done growth. It's fun, but the like uncertainty of figuring, it's like, are we going to make it? What is it? How do, like, to me, that's like, there's a spark there. And so I've seen the whole spectrum. He is very much like right at the start end of that spectrum. And maybe it's because out of his apps, he just got cashed out so early. Like he's like the dream of crypto, right? Like he builds something and then 7 months later, he has like a massive exit and just, sails off into the sunset. He's hit his meme coin a bunch of times at this point.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's actually a reasonable analogy, because people in this space get criticized so much for raising quickly and having all this money very quickly. But it's possible to do that, I guess, in the real world of business too. That is on the table.
It is extremely unusual. Like I'm not familiar with any other founders who have his sort of track record in the way that he builds and exits his companies.
Yeah. Awesome. As you said, I think that is the key conclusion there. Huge win for Solana to have someone of his caliber entering into their ecosystem. Okay, before we get into the main stuff, I wanted to share something today on Plasma. Obviously, we like to dive into different opportunities, different things where we're allocating our attention to, even before we have an opportunity to allocate our capital. The thing I wanted to share here yesterday was I did this tweet where I was just explaining why I thought Plasma is particularly interesting. And everyone's obviously asking how you can get exposure to stablecoins. Stablecoins is like the key topic of conversation. TVL is going through the roof, despite the market not, despite market sentiment, at least on crypto Twitter, being bad. People know that stablecoins are going to be pretty crucial for the next leg of crypto. And I think one of the best answers to that question of what one of the best ways to get exposure to stablecoins is Plasma, because it is a new chain. It's backed by Bitfinex and Tether. It's supported by tier 1 centralized exchanges on launch. It hasn't launched yet, but it's going to. Angels include Peter Thiel, Guy from Athena, and Kobe. And obviously the founder of Tether is very much involved. As soon as I actually found out about this was like a few weeks ago, I reached out to the team. I was trying to figure out, like, can we get an allocation? Can we get involved in some way? They said they were closed. I said, like, closed. There's one type of closed where you think it can still be open. And then there's a different type of closed where it's like, okay, you're actually closed. I've still got a bit of hope. I don't know. I might try again at some point. Maybe there'll be another round. But I think the backing here is exceptional. The people who are backing it are really good. And they've actually released a bit more information yesterday as to why is this necessary? Because one of the things people say about stablecoins is that why not just use the EVM? Why not just send it around on Solana or on Ethereum? What's the point of having something more bespoke when you can already do this cheaply? And I think they gave a bit of an answer yesterday. So there are 3 things that they shared, which I thought was interesting to know of why they thought this stablecoin specific chain is necessary. The first is custom gas tokens so you can pay fees in USDT or Bitcoin. So this is actually going to be built alongside Bitcoin. That's one thing to note. You can actually do custom gas tokens elsewhere as well. So that's not necessarily something specific to this. They said confidential transactions, so you can protect transaction details without sacrificing compliance. But the main thing is they said they're going to make USDT transfers free for simple transactions. So that is obviously something which is completely unique. If the purpose of the chain and if the main asset on the chain is going to be USDT, it's obviously backed by Tether, and they're going to start making those simple transactions free, they can eat those costs because they're making so much money because all of your USDT is in the bank with them and they're earning on top of that instead. That becomes quite a profitable business for them, but also just it becomes a very decent use case for all stablecoin users. Say, well, why pay even $2 or why even pay $1? Why even pay 50 cents when you can do those simple transactions over on Plasma for free? Now, I don't know if this necessarily means they're going to have a moat around that forever. Maybe this is just going to kick off a competition where everyone's going to have to start reducing their fees on stablecoins because they've been making so much damn money already. It's the best business in town, right? They get to hold your money, earn the treasury rate or earn the interest without having to give you anything. So maybe, this is just going to kick off the competition. But wanted to bring that to people's attention. If you're interested in terms of getting any exposure, the only thing that there is to do at the moment is you can join their Discord, and they have something called a stablecoin collective, which is, for people who are taking an interest, people who think this is interesting, it's kind of to do with content. You might be able to get a Discord role or be a part of that. This is not sponsored in any way. It's just something I've found very interesting, and where my attention has gone in some way. Going to pause there. Adam, saw you nodding along there on certain parts. Maybe had some questions around the Bitcoin aspect potentially. What are your reflections here?
Yeah, well, I remain very convinced that stablecoins is one of the very, very clear winners and use cases for crypto. Like whenever I'm trying to pill somebody on crypto, it's like crypto's a scam. I was like, okay, probably a lot of it. However, like stablecoins are like a really important use case. On the Bitcoin piece, I'm pretty skeptical like that it should be used as a settlement layer. It is the most secure, OG chain. However, it's extremely slow and it's also quite expensive. Like, what is the value prop of using Bitcoin as a settlement layer where a transaction can cost, let's say $50, and it could take hours to fulfill, when you can use Ethereum, which could be seconds and, dollars, especially now that gas is sub 1. So I don't know, Bitcoin would be more expensive than a wire transfer. and debatably at the same speed. And so if you're going to introduce a new technology, it has to be better than what currently exists. And I'm not convinced that using Bitcoin as a way to settle stablecoins is the answer. I am extremely bullish on stablecoins generally, and a settlement layer exclusively for stablecoins seems okay. Doesn't feel necessary given that you can already transfer them on any number of blockchains, and it seems to work. So it's unclear if this is like a solution where there is no actual problem, or if there's something that I'm missing that makes it more valuable to have an exclusive chain for settlement. So I don't fully understand the why behind it.
To me, actually, because I agree with your line of thought so much, to me, the thing that stood out more than the free transfers or BTC being the settlement layer is this middle part, the confidential transaction without sacrificing compliance. Because we obviously now have a better situation around Tornado, not OFAC sanctioned anymore, but there's like so many more jurisdictions. And that again reminds me, obviously coming from the EU specific perspective, travel rule. If I want to send you, Adam, more than 1K from my centralized exchange, I need to actually KYC you. Obviously, that's not the case if I'm sending it, from the centralized exchange to my like self-hosted wallet and then to you. But there might be like more business involved transactions. Say the modern market is working with a partner, and that's actually some more compliance to be done in the background. And there is a requirement to have some sort of compliance, whatever that process or regulatory requirement is. Could be crypto asset service providers in the EU, whatever. But still have the protected transaction details, because now it feels like you can either be fully public or you can be like fully private and close to the Tornado Cash, OFAC sanctioned territory, but there's like no mid ground. So actually, to me, this is the interesting feature. The free gas tokens, or doesn't really matter, like send something on ETH, it's what, 6, 12, 18 cents, depending on the speed to send stuff right now. Settling on BTC, yeah, it's secure, but it's slow. But to me, actually, the confidential but compliant transactions is the interesting key point here.
That's interesting. Look, yeah, I think that is also interesting too. There's those 3 reasons they give. I think those 2 are the most interesting. Maybe a quick one to Brett then, putting you on the spot as the technical person. I think that was one of the things that most surprised people about Plasma. It's going to settle to Bitcoin. I found this one tweet which seeks to explain how it works. I wonder if you can just give your quick instinctive takes. I don't think you've seen this yet. You might be able to. It's this tweet here. It's not that one, Ledge. I'm sharing it at the moment. Just need to change the screen. It says Plasma integrates a native trust minimized Bitcoin bridge secured by the same decentralized validator set as Plasma BFT. By periodically anchoring state differences on Bitcoin, Plasma achieves seamless interoperability and uses Bitcoin as a settlement layer, delivering permissionless finality, stronger censorship resistance, and a universally verifiable source of truth. It does also say that it will deploy its core components, the Plasma BFT consensus protocol, optimized for high throughput and low latency, and a fully EVM compatible execution layer built on Breath. So that's a bit of a mouthful for me as a non-technical person, but I can see a bit of EVM compatibility settling on Bitcoin. Does this make sense to you? What's your instinctive thought?
So like the literal like application of it, like cool, you can send shit over to a Bitcoin. That's fine. It's the same stuff that like ordinals and stuff do. Like, oh, it's on Bitcoin, but the problem with doing this stuff on Bitcoin is not natively programmable. Like, right, it has some flexibility with scripts, but like you can't have logic applied to the things on Bitcoin, which makes it materially different than a smart contract platform. Not even Ethereum, just anything that has logic that can be applied. And why that matters is like it's in the verbiage there. It's a little bit of nuance that you can't really detect, but it's like they say the same validators that are existent on Plasma are the ones that are validating the bridge on Bitcoin, right? So that means you have the same entity on the L2 that is making sure that everything that exists on the L1 is cool. That's like in the Ethereum world, that'd be like the sequencer, right? That everyone is scared of because it's owned by one person or a small group of people that says like, hey, I give this stuff over to the sequencer. The sequencer then does all this magic, orders it, executes it, then sends it down to Ethereum. Ethereum then has smart contracts. It then has its own set of validators. It then has all this stuff that sits there, and they do work against the information that is pushed down to Ethereum and says, this stuff's good. And if in a situation where the sequencer is malicious, misbehaves, the L2 entity is broken in some way, they're trying to censor you, you can circumvent that, and you can go directly to Ethereum where this bridge contract exists, because this bridge contract is the thing that says what is true in the world of the L2, right? It's the canonical state of the L2. It says what I own, it says what you own, it says where the tokens just went, right? And that exists there, and the sequencer, all the stuff in the L2 world reads from that and says, okay, this stuff is cool. The problem is, if you, the same entity that has the risk of censoring you at the first level also is the thing that is validating the thing on the second level, well, kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? Like, so you're inheriting one part of the thing, which is good, which is the Bitcoin is like, right, it's permanent, right? Like it's going to be there forever. That's good. Whether that is good permanent or bad permanent, like this information that is permanent is valid, is not as strong on Bitcoin because it's not programmable, because it's the same entity that's doing both of those things. Whereas in the Ethereum world, again, you have your own set of validators, right? It's the most distributed, proof of stake network in the world. It's like got all this stuff, right? It's got logic that can be applied inside of the contract that says the last state snapshot versus the next state snapshot is like, it can actually be bridged to, right? All that stuff. And it holds like the data availability stuff. So it's good on some lines. It's still not awesome on the rest of it because it's not programmable. Maybe that changes with Opcat coming. That's a big thing. And then the secondary question of that is like, okay, how much value does this actually drive to Bitcoin, right? If it's like this other entity, Plasma, is capturing a shit ton of value and then sending shekels back to Bitcoin over a long-term horizon, like how does that accrue value for Bitcoin in a world where it needs fees? It doesn't, right? We're not seeing that in an Ethereum world. That's so, yeah, that's the TLDR based on that thing. I hadn't actually read their actual technical breakdown, but that's my understanding of that.
You're like a human infographic. It's incredible. How do you explain complex things? So you're gonna have to teach me how to explain, things so simply.
It was my career for 10 years. I worked in medical. So like I had to explain tech to doctors and they're like, I don't know what the fuck you're dealing with. I'm like, well, imagine you have two bunnies and do a thing. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the answer. Work in medical for 10 years and then pivot to crypto. So you can explain all these concepts. Perfect.
Draw a lot of diagrams.
Easy peasy.
You heard it here first.
Draw a lot of diagrams as well. Good stuff. Yeah, as we said, that was just an on instinct bread breakdown. But they've released more documents, so I'm interested to find out more. Also want to get the founder on, to be honest, because I think that would be a really interesting conversation to have on a longer, in a longer form. So we'll try to do that. Let's keep it moving though for today. And get into the first headline: BlackRock expanding money market fund to Solana Ledge. What do we need to know here? Why is this interesting? Take it away.
Yeah, big news for Solana, actually. So BlackRock has the BUIDL fund, which is that 1.9 billion headline is a bit outdated here. Money market fund, which lives on 6 blockchains. It started on Ethereum last year, and now they are expanding to Solana. Just as a recap for those not familiar with the BUIDL fund, basically the idea is to make it accessible to institutional investors, to qualified investors, and it's a fund that is holding 1.9 billion in cash and US treasuries. It's gonna go into the stats in a bit. It's growing pretty quickly, so it's gonna hit 2 billion soon, most likely. The fund, again, it started on ETH, also lives on Polygon, Aptos, Arbitrum, Optimism, and is now coming to Solana. The basically co-founder CEO of Securitize is saying, in the year since BUIDL's launched, we've seen significant growth in demand for tokenized real-world assets, reinforcing the value of bringing institutional grade products on chain. And as this whole segment is gaining momentum, it makes sense for BUIDL to expand to Solana. And as part of the article, it's also mentioned that there's only like a bit more than 60 holders of that BUIDL fund, which if we take a look at rwa.xyz, that is true. So it's 1.9 billion. That is up 200%, by the way, over the last 30 days. So it's growing pretty fast. And it is 62 holders only, but that is to do that. Again, it's not open to everyone. You need to be a US qualified purchaser to be able to invest in that fund, which in my opinion makes it even cooler, because it shows that there is some serious institutional grade demand for that. And that's not only for the BlackRock Biddle Fund. If you go through the whole category of tokenized treasuries, that is now a $5.2 billion market. It's up 13% over the last week alone. And there's Templeton in there. There's a couple more other providers offering very, very similar products. Most of that volume up to date, 3.8 billion, is living on ETH. We've seen a bit on Solana, seen a bit on Avalanche, a bit on Arbitrum. This is the Solana segment right here, the pink one, with currently 120 mil out of the total assets under management. And it will be interesting to revisit this chart to see both how tokenized treasuries are increasing over the next couple of months, but also to see how much of the new inflows will happen on Solana versus ETH for BlackRock's Biddle Fund specifically.
Excellent summary. That chart was super helpful, led because that was the exact question I was going to ask you next. Like, where, in what proportion are these chains capturing those tokenized treasury markets? Sounds like ETH is by far and away the biggest. The interesting thing there that I hadn't realized is, what was the second one? There's some yellow segment called Stellar. Is that XRP somehow?
Stellar is its own thing, isn't it? Or is Stellar on XRP? I wouldn't know. I think it's its own thing, but let me check that real quick though.
Okay, well, the thing that I was thinking, and maybe this is a question for the guys who are...
It's its own thing. XLM, it's its own thing, yeah.
Okay, so the way people, again, maybe this is just how narratives form on the internet. People think about this stuff as ETH versus Sol. And when you had that chart up, there's a bunch of other segments that were bigger than Sol at this point in time, at least. So I think that's interesting to note, because you can see, I mean, what can you tell us, Ledge, that's got more tokenized treasury share than Solana at the moment?
Currently, Arbitrum with 130 mil versus the 120 on Solana. Stellar with 465. AVAX is just behind Solana at 106 mil. And again, the biggest one is obviously still ETH with 3.8 billion.
Interesting. Very interesting stuff. Adam, what do you think on, I mean, we spoke the other day about being probably like slightly more ETH aligned people. And then we also spoke about, I think there's definitely a confidence amongst ETH investors that a lot of this activity, because Ethereum is the most decentralized, therefore it should be the most trusted when it comes to this type of stuff. We had a long-time listener message specifically yesterday to say, like, look, guys, it's happening elsewhere too. What's your view on that? Do you think, do you buy into the thing where ETH is it should be taking and maintaining that significant advantage that it has? Or do you think in the end, like, look, people are just going to go where their liquidity is, and if Solana keeps doing well, it will keep capturing more?
Do you want my honest answer or the answer that I wish to be true? And like, so, you know, I was at GDC last week and ended up talking about ETH a lot with, you know, with the CEO of Proof of Play, Amit, and we're both very much aligned with the virtual world computer vision, like the technology. Like, the fact is the value accrual is sort of simply not there. Like, the L2s and the L3s are not adding value back to ETH. There's, you know, a number of like L1s that are taking away value. I don't see the narrative story outside of it's the second best coin after Bitcoin. But why is it the second best coin? I think it kind of, this is not my line, but I think ETH has maybe kind of become like a meme coin at this point, where it will have value because other people believe it has value. It's no longer deflationary. It's no longer like ultrasound money. Like, you know, gas is under 1 ETH. That just shows like demand for the chain itself. As far as like where value goes, I still think it's probably like the best place to do these, you know, high value transactions. That's why we put our collections there. That's why we're settling to it ultimately. But I think what you said at the end is right. People will go where the liquidity is, wherever that may be, like Locust Capital. What the end state of where like if we get to a point where blockchain is accepted by fintech in a more traditional way, and it becomes like a settlement layer for either real world assets or stable coins, whatever that looks like, where it's truly integrated into the global financial system, I think it's likely that would happen on ETH. But ultimately, it's going to be about like regulatory things, like regulatory capture, like has the right connections where, like who's networking with the right politicians, with the right because like we have one administration now, who knows what we'll have next. Like maybe they're not going to be XRP and Cardano aligned. Maybe they're going to be, you know, they want to put everything on Dogecoin, or maybe they're going to want to put everything on ETH. Like nobody really knows, but whoever acts quickly to sort of like get that regulatory capture is probably going to be the ultimate winner. But I don't think we have I don't think the story is played out yet. We're seeing a lot of things move around regularly.
I think that's one of my biggest learnings of this, what is only my second cycle. I don't think this cycle is over. This is my second cycle. It's just the understanding that Bitcoin is separate. Everything else is just great tech. And as we know from the past, like tech can be great for a period of time, and then it has to keep working to beat the competitors that want to take its place. And I think that competition is going to be incredibly aggressive over for the foreseeable future. It will just be incredibly aggressive, really, really strong competition, which ultimately be good for the space, I think, because competition should be good. We should welcome that. But it just means that the winner is, you know, going to have to keep working, going to have to keep staying at the top. So I definitely take your point there that, you know, the game's not up, I don't think. Interesting stuff. Look, talking of regulatory capture, let's move into, actually, it's not a good segue because, well, one of the things that Movement have been talking about is like politics and how that is a good go-to-market strategy. You know, crypto's ethos can exist, but at the same time, these chains are going to go out there to get business, as Adam was just saying. But Movement are in the news for some other scrutiny this time. Brad, you've got the scoop here. What do we need to know? It's kind of a disturbing story in some ways. What's going on?
It's interesting, if nothing else, because it's something that a lot of us probably didn't have visibility into prior to this. So the headline is Movement Labs draws scrutiny following Binance market maker investigation. The initial overview is from Blockworks. And the TLDR is that Movement hired a market maker. Web3 Port is the one that's been called out through investigations. And after going live back in December, it was discovered that Binance was kicking Web3 Port off of their platform, right? The SEX, and it was because they saw irregular activities coming out of their trading. And what that was on launch, they actually had sold around $38 million worth of tokens back in December, Move tokens specifically, and that's not great, right? The job of a market maker is not necessarily to just dump on retail, but to try to offer a bid basically for your actual provide liquidity, right? Make sure that thing is actually tradable and maintain a delta neutral position. But they were dumping tokens. They made about $38 million. Binance banned them. And the Movement team stepped up and said, hey, we saw that they did this. We are now going to set up a Movement strategic reserve, or strategic Movement reserve, buy back the same $38 million worth in tokens and make it use it for future growth in the ecosystem, right? You know, sustainable stuff, all this shit. And then you just start to see a bunch of things come out from the rest of the ecosystem. One, namely from Kane, famously of Synthetics and Infinex now, where he gives kind of a little bit of a war story on market makers broadly. So it's a long read. There's a lot of stuff to go into. I think it's just kind of interesting to kind of peel back the curtains and see what's going on. His experience with launching, remember, he's an OG. He's been here through like the ICO era. Like he's been on the corporate side, corporate being like the professional like product side since the 2017 years. So like he gets a lot of insight into like how people behave back then. You can see him reference like how Alameda and SPX and a few others actually like behaved over the ages. And his high level is that like, okay, you know, there was a call option structure where the market makers would do a call option because it was cheaper, then it allowed them to dump, and then they could like short it and like just all the shit. He expands on it. And he's saying that the meta has evolved again. Now you basically just get sold discounted tokens to liquid funds, and then those guys actually just are able to operate that way. And he gives a few examples in here. Again, it's just a useful read. It's like some lore to the industry. He has a 1, 2, and 3 example. I want to see what your guys' thoughts are on who this number 3 could be. So he gives 3 examples of ways that market makers have been really good at psyoping basically everyone else on CT. Like they say, like, oh, Alameda is actually these like goated genius traders who were, in the background. They have this edge. They're doing this shit in, like, I think it was calling out Japan specifically. Smart as shit. Turns out that they're just like grifters that like can't even track their own P&L, and like they just have the inside. So like they create this mystique around people, and then through that mystique, they're able to do crime. And then eventually the crime gets found out, and everything unravels. And this number 3, he's talking about, like, it sounds like hyperliquid, but it can't be hyperliquid. But his number 3 example of like grifting going on in the space sounds like it might be something recent. And maybe it's the movement stuff that he's referring to now that I think about it. But his description is, oh no, you've got it all wrong. It isn't this weird deal with liquid funds that is pumping that L1. Again, because movement has been described as a side chain, and L2 and L1. It's all over the place based on its construction. It's been getting dunked on by the technical crypto Twitter crowd. But he said, it isn't. It's this weird deal with the liquid funds that is pumping the L1 vapor token. The founder is just rich from his prior startup and is bidding it himself into a low liquidity, low float in reality. And reality is, like, I guess what he's referring to here. But like Rushi was a college student, so I don't think he has this lore of being rich previously, unless they're talking about like his co-founder, who's like this guy behind the scenes that I've heard about a few times. Hyperliquid had like the Jeff was previously rich as a market maker prior to his stuff, but again, Hyperliquid actually has a really good product. So like it's not a vapor L1. So what could that be? I don't know.
I like this. I like this storyline for the show. We need like one of those boards up with different people's names. We've got to like pin people's
who has
images.
all the traits.
I don't know. It's turned into a bit of a mystery game, but as you say, I think it's a challenging circumstance because, well, we spoke about it on the show a few weeks ago, right? Like when you talked about what the game's pivoted to, it's kind of become even less opaque. Well, as in it's opaque in that nobody knows about it, but it's simply apparently the deals that are going around, which are as simple as buy the token at this price on the market, and you'll get given tokens at this price later, or much, much lower for you to sell later, which is, I don't know. It's very duplicitous in a way, right? It's just how is anyone in this retail market supposed to figure out what's going on when you're seeing these tokens at the price that they are, if that stuff is going on and those things are not disclosed? It creates a hell of a lot of confusion, I think. And again, just a bad taste, I think.
One day I'll write the expose, the chaos monkeys of the crypto space. If you're familiar with that book, it absolutely needs to be written, because people don't understand all the shenanigans that take place behind the scenes.
Yeah, you've gone through this, right?
I've been through it. I've hired and fired. Well, the foundation has hired and fired market makers. They've been approached by liquid token funds. There is just all sorts of nefariousness going on behind the scenes. One of the things that we at Proof of Play pride ourselves on is, I think it's our first or second value is industry leading integrity. Like that's a standard we hold ourselves to. And it's extremely difficult to operate in a space where others don't follow the same set of principles. Like you have teams that are just straight up doing illegal things. Like they're not even like borderline, they're just full illegal, but they're in different locales. And so, or they just have different risk tolerances. And then you have, communities and just like the entirety of the space have eyes on you. And they're like, oh, why don't you also do that? Like, wait, why isn't your
you crime, Fern?
Yeah. Why isn't your token pumping like nonstop? It's like, well, because what you're seeing there is like inorganic, potentially illegal activity. And we're not willing to do that. Like my job is not to go to jail to enrich you. Like my job is to build something of value that hopefully others enjoy, want to take part in, and therefore they think they see their value and they want to buy it. It's old fashioned. It's boring. Maybe it doesn't work, to be perfectly frank, in this space. Like maybe you have to have a bit of like Joker in you if you want to survive. But at the end of the day, like I'm a doxed person, you know, like my reputation is the most important thing to me. Like our team's reputations are the most important things to us. And it's much more important that we operate and are able to sleep well at night and operate with high integrity than make short-term decisions that have long-term negative implications. And there's other teams that make the opposite decision, right? And that's totally fine, but it's hard to coexist in a place where it's such an uneven playing ground. And every time a news story like this comes out, people are seeing more and more of what's happening behind the scenes, like the Kessler, the Solana, like Radium, Jupiter, like this is all happening all the time. Like I didn't know anything about the Solana stuff. It's not my ecosystem, but I knew it was happening. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew something was happening. But I couldn't, now I know. Now we all know.
Yeah. And there's something you can give color to, like the movement's been shrouded in a lot of these controversies, and like the default now, I think, is people are just assuming that they are the ones that are guilty of all of this, where it's like, oh, there's no way that movement didn't know about the market maker doing the thing because of the whatever. So maybe the color you could provide is like, is it plausible that people go rogue? Like you had, maybe in your own experience, you had agreements with a market maker that acted on their own interests and outside of what you knew they were going to do. And therefore that leads you to the next thing. Like, okay, we gotta rectify this.
A market maker's job is to make money for itself. Its business is not to you, it's to its LPs or to its proprietary fund, however they're set up. They have agreements with the teams they're working with, but ultimately, if those agreements will make them less money than decisions that they would be making that are counter to your own interests, they're going to make those decisions. And there's the only recourse you have is to remove them and no longer work with them.
It's all about incentives, huh?
You can try to align incentives really well, but there's always going to be an ARB, and if there is an ARB, they will take it.
Interesting. Really interesting conversation. I think it's really important for people when I think two things. One, I think that conversation is a really interesting one for people to hear. Two, if you haven't already, and Brad brought up the thread from Kane, go and read that in a bit more detail. Because I think if you're going to participate in this market, you have to have a handle on what is going on behind the scenes, because it's kind of like shooting blind. Basically, when you're starting to realize the amount of stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and you're just like pulling up your chart on a Wednesday morning thinking, oh, this is up 2%, or whoa, this is up 9%. What's going on here? Like you're not privy. Obviously, you can't be privy to all the things, but just to have an appreciation of some of the stuff that's going on, I think is going to become super helpful as a tool in your toolkit, basically, to try to navigate this market. Because it really feels like when you find out some of the stuff that, damn, I've been shooting blind for a long time. I don't even, you start to wonder how you've even been successful beforehand if all of this other stuff is going on at the same time. So very, very helpful conversation. Appreciate that extra insight, Adam.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. Even if you know how it works, it doesn't really help you, to be clear. Like you can know, I know all the things that could happen. I know the whole range of options. It doesn't make me a better trader. Maybe I'm too stupid to know how to calculate, like, translate it to the right, actions, but I know what's going to happen.
You know too much now.
I know so much, and I still don't know how to action on it. So these market makers behave in mysterious ways. Some of them are just like straight up bad actors, right? Like Kessler is just, they're bad hombres. And then you have everyone else just self-interested. And so you can try to put yourselves in their position. But remember, they can make money on both sides. They can make money longing a coin and shorting a coin. So what do you do with that information? If you know a market maker has 10 million tokens from an ecosystem, they can take either action and make money because they have so many tokens they're able to move the market. So how do you as a retail participant action on that? And I don't actually know the answer.
It's a good question. Maybe we're probably going to leave the final headline for today because we're running out of time. But Ledge, to that question, if people are trying to figure out how to position themselves or how to respond to this type of information when we learn about it, as an ordinary individual trying to participate, how would you think about dealing with this information and managing this information?
So, first of all, I think it's cool that we have this amount of information, because if you go back to the average TradFi participant, you wouldn't have that detail of insight as to how things work in the background. So I do think there's like more transparency in Web3 already. Very much agree with Adam's point, because market makers make money off volume. Look at something like Wintermute, who have done what, 7, maybe now $9,000 billion in volume already. And that goes both ways. And they, if they hold a token, they will know what the market, and will watch how the market is trading that, and they will react to that, and they will make money on reacting to that. So it's not the best idea to try to outtrade a market maker necessarily. It's probably like the same thing if you're like, oh, I see Jared from Subway, and I see 2 of his main wallets who have done a couple billion in token outflows over the last, I don't know, couple months, and you're like, let me see if I can get a piece of that action and compete with Jared when it comes to MEV stuff. You're going to lose your money. And I would basically take the same stance with the elite market makers. If you're not the top 0.01% and you know what you're actually doing, don't go to quote unquote war with a market maker. If you see a market maker coming into your token, you're like getting kind of afraid of that, and like use this as a good, instance to question your conviction. Is it long term? What do you want to do with that? Say you hold, I don't know, I don't want to point out a token. Say you hold a token which is called BCZ, probably like even exists, and you see a market maker is coming in, and you're worried about that because it's like rather low market cap and you don't know what's going to happen with that. Then maybe this is the point to ask yourself if you are in for like a quick trade for that, or if it's like a long-term play. And if it's a long-term play for you, then one market maker entering that shouldn't like scare you off. If it's more of a quick trade, which was the case with some of the AI agents, right? When we were trading AI XPT and smaller ones, Poly Trader, and you were waiting, oh, market maker is coming in. In that case, that was a good sell signal actually, because they then made more money on the shorts. So yeah, don't try to outtrade the market maker, but use it as a good spot to question yourself. What do you want? What do you expect from holding that token in particular?
One final thing as we close out, not entirely serious, but maybe in the best case scenario, if you can't beat them, can you join them? In the sense that not the nefarious ones, I hope, but we've been speaking about Wildcat on the show, Legendary, last couple weeks. It's this new protocol where you can provide liquidity to trusted borrowers. So you have to be whitelisted. So one of the first teams who were seeking funding on Wildcat was Wintermute. And so, I provided some liquidity, and now I guess as Wintermute profit, you profit as well. I'm hoping that there must be some, like, given that Wintermute's standard seem to be one of the number one market makers, that there's some standards there that they're operating better than others. I would hope that them being that in that position would mean that. But I guess, as you say, it's kind of an opaque thing. We never know entirely. But that is an interesting alternative way. You said you can't beat them or don't go to war with them. It's one way to join some of them that you might think are better than others. Want to put that out there.
Capitalism just beautiful. Can't beat them, just throw money at them and at least make money off them winning.
The best ones, the ones where you think are better than the others. So let's see. That's the option. That's the final one to close out. Really, really interesting conversation. Glad we had that. Adam, I thought those extra insights coming from you being in the trenches and in the arena really was really helpful for that conversation. But guys, that's our show for today. We've run a little bit over. Thanks so much for joining us. We had Legendary, Bread, and Adam from Proof of Play up with us on stage. Thanks to everyone for being here. Remember, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X Video, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. We'll be back again same time tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.